Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the absolutely action-packed, incredible, and surprisingly short life of history's most famous conqueror. So, what exactly earns someone the title of the Great? Let's dive right in. You see, looking back through history, plenty of kings wanted wealth, and sure, generals wanted victory. But this one kid, he wanted the entire world. And even now, thousands of years later, we're still talking about him. Not just because he inherited a throne, but because he literally refused to stop pushing the boundaries of the map. To really wrap our heads around this epic journey, we're going to map out his life in 5 quick chapters. A legend is born, the young king rises, conquering the ancient world, the final frontier, and finally, a legacy that changed history. All right, chapter 1, A Legend is Born, the boy from Macedonia. Our story kicks off in 356 BC, up in the kingdom of Macedonia, just north of Greece. And there's this amazing early story that perfectly captures his genius, showing us exactly why thinking outside the box was just as crucial as his physical strength. So the story goes that this massive, completely wild horse named Bucephalus is brought to the royal court. This thing is terrifying everyone. Not a single experienced rider can get near him. But young Alexander? He notices something everyone else completely missed. The horse was literally just terrified of its own shadow. So, with a bit of quick thinking, he turns the horse toward the sun, putting the shadow behind it. Boom. Instantly calm, and he just leaps right onto its back. Seeing this absolutely impossible feat, his dad, King Philip II, was beyond proud. Legend has it, he was even brought to tears, and he drops this incredibly prophetic line on his kid. "My son, find yourself a kingdom equal to your ambitions. Macedon is too small a place for you." That bond with the horse, it stuck for life. And Philip knew right then and there that his son was meant for something huge. But look, Alexander wasn't just all brawn and bravery. The kid had a seriously brilliant mind. To make sure he got the best education possible, his father brings in none other than Aristotle. Yes, that Aristotle. They're having these incredible outdoor lessons covering geography, politics, literature. And maybe most importantly, Aristotle introduces him to the works of Homer, especially the hero Achilles. Alexander actually carried a copy of the Iliad with him everywhere. It completely filled his head with this insatiable thirst for glory. Moving into chapter 2, The Young King Rises, Securing the Throne. It's honestly mind-blowing how fast Alexander had to pivot from being a student to a hardcore ruler in a really unforgiving world. His teenage years were basically a masterclass in high-stakes leadership. At just 16, he's left in charge as regent while his dad is away. And what does he do? Instantly crushes a local rebellion. At 18, he's fighting next to his dad at the Battle of Chaeronea, leading a massive cavalry charge that clinches the win. But then, everything flips in 336 BC. King Philip is unexpectedly assassinated at a celebration. Suddenly, at barely 20 years old, Alexander inherits a completely unstable kingdom. Naturally, enemies smelled blood in the water. Rebellions sparked instantly, all over Greece, especially in the city of Thebes. Now, instead of panicking or hesitating, this 20-year-old kid strikes with terrifying speed. He marches his army right up to Thebes, surrounds it, and completely destroys the city. It sent shockwaves everywhere. It proved to the entire world that this young king wasn't some weak kid. He was dangerously decisive. It's a harsh lesson for sure, but it cemented his authority overnight. On to chapter 3, Conquering the Ancient World, the March East. So, with Greece totally locked down and unified, Alexander sets his sights on the ultimate prize, his father's lifelong dream of invading the massive Persian Empire. In 334 BC, he takes his army across the Hellespont into Asia, kicking off this wild, multi-continent campaign that honestly looked absolutely impossible to anyone watching. I mean, he was stepping right into the backyard of the greatest superpower on Earth. The odds completely stacked against him. You've got the Persian Empire, led by King Darius III, rolling in endless wealth and boasting armies that vastly outnumbered the Greeks. But Alexander had a highly disciplined force and, more importantly, unmatched strategic brilliance. Time and time again, think legendary clashes like Issus and Gaugamela, Alexander would spot these tiny weaknesses in massive enemy formations. He'd personally lead these daring cavalry charges straight at the center line, gunning right for King Darius himself. It literally caused the Persian king to panic and run, triggering total collapse in the mighty Persian ranks. But if you want to see his absolute refusal to take no for an answer, just look at the siege of Tyre. Tyre was this heavily fortified island surrounded by the ocean. Everyone thought it was totally unconquerable. Well, Alexander disagreed.
Instead of throwing in the towel, he literally orders his men to build a road through the ocean. I'm not kidding. Month after month, they build this massive land bridge, eventually breach the walls and take the city. It basically announced to the ancient world that for Alexander, impossible was just a suggestion.
Pushing further south into Egypt, he doesn't hit a wall of resistance. He hits a massive celebration. The Egyptians actually welcomed him as a liberator from the Persians. The priests honored him, he was declared a true pharaoh, and they even proclaimed him the son of the god Ammon. It was right here that he traced lines in the sand to found the legendary city of Alexandria, before pivoting his army back east to finally finish off the Persian Empire once and for all.
All right, Chapter 4, the final frontier, reaching the edge of the world. Now, with Persia completely defeated and ridiculous amounts of wealth captured from cities like Babylon, most kings would have just called it a day and retired in luxury. But not Alexander. The edge of the known world was calling his name. He pushes his exhausted men even further east, crossing unknown mountains and rivers until they finally hit India. And man, what a clash. He faces off against King Porus, who brings war elephants to the fight. These were enormous beasts that absolutely terrified the Macedonian troops and caused pure chaos. Yet Alexander just adapts on the fly and still pulls off a magnificent victory. And in a real show of respect for Porus's fighting spirit, he actually lets him stay on as ruler. So here is the crucial takeaway, and honestly the ultimate irony of this whole story. No enemy army, no unbreachable fortress, not even giant war elephants could defeat Alexander the Great. But you know who could? His own men. After marching thousands of miles over years and years, his soldiers were just done. They were exhausted, terribly homesick, and they flat out refused to march another step. Hearing his men's broken hearts, the great conqueror reluctantly agreed to pack it in, leaving his dream of reaching the literal end of the world unfinished. Which brings us to Chapter 5, a legacy that changed history, the aftermath. As they started the long trek back toward Greece, the brutal sun and lack of resources really took a heavy toll on the army and on Alexander himself. In fact, before he could ever set foot in his home of Macedonia again, he falls seriously ill. His condition goes downhill fast, and in 323 BC, right in the city of Babylon, he takes his final breath. He was only 32 years old. The sudden death of this seemingly invincible king completely stunned the world and threw his massive, sprawling empire into utter chaos. But just take a second to look at what he actually achieved in that wildly short time. He campaigned relentlessly for 15 brutal years across 3 different continents, and in all that time, through countless battles, he never lost a single one. Not even one. It is absolutely staggering. He literally redrew the map of the world. He founded over 70 cities, sure, mostly naming them Alexandria after himself, because why not? But in a really wonderful nod to his past, he actually named one of those cities in India after his beloved, majestic horse, Bucephalus, the same horse that carried him through so many of those fierce battles. But his most lasting legacy, and the reason we're still talking about him today, isn't just the land he conquered. It's the culture he spread. By blending Greek ideas, art, and language with the vast territories of Asia and Egypt, he kicked off what we call the Hellenistic period. He effectively connected the East and the West, creating this shared culture that stuck around for centuries, eventually shaping the Roman Empire and, really, the entire modern Western world. We've seen the boy who tamed the wild horse and the man who tamed the known world. But as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this one thought to chew on. Was Alexander's absolute refusal to stop his greatest triumph, the very thing that made him the greatest leader in history? Or was that unyielding, relentless ambition a tragic flaw that ultimately cost him his life at just 32? It's a fascinating question to ponder. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through history.